Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I'm having a great day because I'm joined right now by the one, the only PEPE Escobar. He's in his hometown of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I guess it's not sunny there, but it is sunny for the first time in a long time in Moscow today. So I'm happy. Everyone probably already knows Pepe. You're familiar with his work, but if you've been living under a rock, he is been covering the multipolar world since the 80s, I believe, going back then. Yep. And he's written several books, and he predicted a lot of what is happening now in those books. You can find his work in a number of places: Asia Times, Counterpunch, Al Jazeera, Press TV, RT, Sputnik, Strategic Culture Foundation, Guancha, and much more. So, Pepe, how's it going today? BRICS is coming to you very soon. How are the preparations?
Great to be with you, Jackson. I wish I was in Moscow in summertime because I am in Rio in winter. Can you believe this?
It's crazy.
I arrived here 4 days ago, and as I told you, at 7 in the morning, I was doing my morning walk on the beach under the rain, which is completely absurd for Rio, you know. So it's a sort of storm before the calm, not the calm before the storm, you know. But it's friendly.
What are the major developments that you hope to see at this BRICS summit in Rio? And are there any big expectations? Because it's being held early this year, and that's a notable development.
Well, ask Brazilian diplomacy why they make an annual summit in the middle of the year. And in fact, I was with a roundtable yesterday with Chinese and South Africans, and they were asking the same question. Well, it's extremely complicated. There is a clash at the highest levels of power in Brazil about Brazil's role in BRICS. There is an anti-BRICS lobby, which is completely absurd in several key ministers, like the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Foreign Relations. Lula is a pro-BRICS guy, absolutely. He's one of the founders of the original BRIC, only four, without South Africa. But the problem is Lula is more or less by himself in his new government. He's being assailed from all sides. And in 24 hours that I spent here, Jackson, I learned, like, I had a crash course in Brazilian politics that would take me 1 year. And it's very, very complex. And this reflects on BRICS, where all the hard work that the Russians put on last year, where they work nonstop for 10 months, for the BRICS summit in Kazan. This year, the Brazilians maybe worked for 3 months, 4 max, until the summit starting on Sunday. It's not good enough. So the expectations here are low, but the expectations across the global south are immense. Because everywhere from Nigeria to Indonesia, people are expecting something big to come out of this summit. Several problems. Xi Jinping is not here. Vladimir Putin is not here. And the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, is not here for obvious reasons. He's in the middle of a war, a developing war. So this is going to be very complicated. So what are the Indians doing? They're stepping up their PR. There's an enormous Indian delegation coming between today and tomorrow. And the chairmanship of BRICS next year is going to be India. So they're already preparing the terrain. So this means that a lot of people, even inside BRICS, don't believe that something meaningful will come out from these meetings on Sunday and Monday. The great thing here, Jackson, are the parallel meetings. These are absolutely outstanding. Yesterday, I was at the meeting of the Beijing Club, which is a top-of-the-line think tank, low profile, but with the best guys, for instance, from Shanghai International Studies, Tsinghua University, absolutely outstanding discussions and frank discussions because it's Chatham House rules. So you can be absolutely free to say anything you want because it won't be published or republished later, you know. So you can really speak your mind freely. And coming from top Chinese scholars is excellent. And one of the running themes is the China-India relationship. There's a lack of trust. And these are the two of the top original BRIC and then BRICS founders. So obviously all this will be reflected on the table. But a lot of people are expecting at least a common position on not de-dollarization, but the road towards de-dollarization, which means all the experiments doing bilaterally and multilaterally inside BRICS, trading their own currencies, new payment settlement systems, the Chinese CIPS system and the Russian SPFS system merging. For instance, in Iran, you can use Mir cards in Iran. That kind of, it starts like this, and it's already ongoing. And even outside of the bureaucratic setup of BRICS, which is huge, you have these discussions. You know, after I'm talking to you, I'm going to an NDB meeting, the BRICS banks in Shanghai. Dilma Rousseff, the president, she's here. And Sulianov, the Russian finance minister, is here. So this is really, really big. And they will be discussing, of course, this different roads towards de-dollarization. So what's happening on the sidelines of BRICS is perhaps even more important than what's going to happen this weekend.
And what do you make of the new guarantee fund, they're calling it, that's going to be backed by the new development bank? Do you think this is a big development that it was kind of earmarked for this event to be announced this week?
Potentially, yes, Jackson. Today is the last day of this NDB meeting, started yesterday. And next week, there's going to be a sort of round table, relatively closed, with President Dilma Rousseff. We hope to be there as well. This will be after BRICS. BRICS ends on Monday, and this is going to be on Tuesday. So perhaps on Tuesday, they're going to announce something along these lines. But the NDB, for example, yesterday, I was discussing the NDB. We were discussing in another panel, this one on Sputnik. It's going to be, I think it's going to be online everywhere. It's already online here in Brazil. With Paulo Nogueira Batista, my very good friend. He's one of the founders, one of the co-founders of the NDB. Paulo is an absolutely brilliant world-class economist, but he's also very critical of something that he helped to create. He says, there's got to be a total revamp. The statutes of the bank. The bank, for instance, they only have 10 members. You cannot have an international bank with only 10 members. So they have to grow, they have to expand, and of course, they have to de-dollarize little by little. So they cannot be a second World Bank. They have to be the alternative, the post-World Bank alternative, right? So we're still very far away from that, but slowly but surely, you know.
Yes. What do you think about the state of affairs with Brazil's chairmanship after the veto against Venezuela to join the BRICS grouping? And as I understand, Brazil was kind of the only country that was vetoing most of the prospective new BRICS members. And that's why they created the BRICS partner program to get these countries closer into BRICS. What does that say for the, you know, the level of seriousness of Brazil as a BRICS power right now? And moving forward, also, you know, your thoughts on Brazil's leadership, because Lula, he's very old. He's not healthy. You know, God forbid anything happens, and there's no successor. Bolsonaro also can't run. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in Brazil.
This is an extremely complex problem because it points to the beginning of our conversation, the internal split in Brazil at ministerial level and even reaching Lula's palace in Brasilia. Their priority this year, Jackson, is not this summit. It's the COP summit in the Amazon in November. So try to explain to our Chinese or Russian friends, you know, BRICS summit in the middle of the year with not too much serious work behind it. You have to try to explain to them this fragmented Brazilian political scene, which is yesterday I spent half of the day just decoding what the tsunami of information that I was receiving, and it's a holy mess. And it's going to get much worse because the elections are next year. Lula is going to run, and he's going to run against a Bolsonarista that is probably more popular than him next year. So this, and obviously the campaign has already started, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that how Lula now, this weekend, can convince the other BRICS members of exactly the point that you touched, the seriousness of the Brazilian presidency this year. They vetoed Venezuela over and over again, but they agreed with the Southeast Asians, with the Central Asians, which were basically Russia and China. They brought 3 Southeast Asians as partners, very important, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand. So Southeast Asia now is very, very important. And Putin, in every forum in Russia, as you know, is always saying the 2 top development areas in the world from now on are going to be Southeast Asia and Africa. So they brought Africans as well. They brought Nigeria, Uganda. But Brazil, in terms of South America, they could only agree with Bolivia and Cuba. Lula has very good historical relations with Bolivia, whoever is in power, Evo or somebody else, and with Cuba as well. Venezuela, the Ministry of Foreign Relations steps in, and they veto, essentially. It was a Ministry of Foreign Relations of Brazil veto, essentially, because most of them are Atlanticists. Try to explain all that in only 2 days to the other partners, Jackson. It's impossible.
Well, what do you think about the future of the Indian chairmanship? A lot of people would argue that India is one of, if not the weakest links in BRICS right now, out of the major partners or major powers. Yes. I don't know. I think there's a debate for Brazil to hold that title, but what do you say to people who are worried about India's chairmanship moving forward?
You know what some of these Chinese think tank heavyweights were saying these past 2 days? We had a dinner and then we had a formal meeting yesterday. They were saying maybe we should start considering the I in BRICS as a double I, Iran and Indonesia. India out. You see? The Chinese are already discussing this seriously because they see India as playing a double game. Don't forget, also very, very important, who was invited to the latest G7 seductively? Come to us, Brazil and India. Why? Because they are the 2 weak links among the founders of BRICS. So this, from the point of view of China and Russia, it went really, really badly, you know. It explains to, I would say, a 20 or 30% why Xi Jinping is not here. Of course, our Chinese friends, they say, no, because Lula visited Xi 2 months ago for the CELAC meeting. So Lula they talked about everything. So Xi Jinping didn't have to come here. It's a long trip, etc. This is also another 20, 30% of the whole thing. The whole thing is there is a groundswell of diffidence towards India, not only from China, but also from their very good partners, Russia as well. And of course, very, very important, defending Iran diplomatically, and of course, what we were discussing yesterday, discreetly, you know, made in the shade help for Iran, which is going to be air defense systems, the J-10C fighters, maybe finally Su-35 fighters, but these are very costly. You have to train the pilots. It's very complex. But both Russians and Chinese, and when we talk to them here, they say, of course we are helping Iran their own way, and we don't advertise how we are helping them. For most of us, they are a matter of national security because they are our key partner in West Asia. Everybody knows that across Eurasia. And I'm very curious to see the Iranian delegation coming here. I met already with a guy from the embassy in Brasilia. And he said, yes, the president is not coming, but the foreign minister actually is coming. And we're going to have a heavyweight delegation as well. And we want to put the Iranian issue on the table. And all of us are speculating, how deep are they going to discuss an attack on BRICS as a whole? On one major BRICS member, now full member, Iran. Iran's not a partner. Iran's a full member. And an attack on BRICS as a whole, which is the let's say, the logical angle of the very illogical Trump 2.0 foreign policy.
Brief side note, because I saw you were in Tehran.
Yes.
I believe you're actually all across Iran not too long ago, a few months ago. And while you were there, yes, there was a viral clip of you where you were in conversation with an Iranian general, and
Yes.
you asked, when is Operation True Promise 3 coming? What
Yes.
did you think about this response that Iran gave? And do you think that it was enough to potentially quell the beast that is the U.S. Zionist partnership from thinking about attacking again anytime soon?
It's a very good question, Jackson, because now some other generals or brigadier generals, they are saying on the record, in fact, I saw it a few minutes ago, we only use between 20 and 30% of our missile potential. This means this was a message. This was, let's say, the first step of Operation True Promise 3, but not the whole operation. When I asked that question in Tehran to a brigadier general, the guy who was taking care of us when we visited the Aerospace Museum and installations, he gave me a very diplomatic response. Then later we got a faithful translation of what he said. It was a very complex answer, but basically was saying, it's ready. It's been ready for a long time. We're just waiting for the order, and when the order comes, we launch it, which is what they did after the first 48 hours, when they were stunned by the complexity of the Israeli attack, and including the decapitation. They were traumatized by the decapitation. They recovered in less than 48 hours. They had the new line of command completely. They launched, let's say, the first stage of True Promise 3. They changed their tactics after a few days, and they went from defense to offense, and they start launching their top missiles to the point that BB had to pick up the phone and tell Daddy, please help me. That's the real story. That obviously you won't see in Western mainstream media, right?
Yeah. Going back to BRICS, do you think that any of the partners there right now or member countries are feeling pressure from the Trump White House? Because Trump talked a lot of game before actually getting inaugurated about tariffs, sanctions on countries pursuing de-dollarization. What is the feeling there right now about the United States?
Yes, we haven't talked to everybody because the delegations are coming. For instance, I'm very curious to talk to the Indonesians. Indonesians now, they are BRICS members, full members, ahead of the other Southeast Asians. And Indonesia, as we know, is going to be one of the big powers of the 21st century. And of course, the American pressure in Indonesia is very powerful, but it's indirect. They know that they cannot mess with this new Indonesia, which is very nationalist, especially because now they have very good relations with both Russia and China at the same time, and also with India that they had for decades, right? But the African nations, of course, they will be very weary, Nigeria and Uganda. The Central Asians, because they are close to both Russia and China, they feel more or less, let's say, protected. They are under the umbrella of Russia and China. But of course, don't forget, color revolutions can be started in Kazakhstan like this. It's very easy. In southern Kazakhstan, in Almaty, for instance. The previous coup against Tokayev in Astana, the color revolution started in Almaty, which is the business center in the south. So this could happen again, and they know it. So it's very, very, and of course, West Asia is more complicated because the Emirates are a full member of BRICS. Saudi Arabia is still sitting on the fence. Nobody knows what is Saudi Arabia. What is Saudi Arabia? Where is Saudi Arabia? Nobody knows. But the Emirates, for instance, they sent a huge delegation here, and they came here to do business. They are very interested in investing in Brazil, just like the Chinese. Brazil for Emirates, Chinese, and even Russians is one of the big frontiers of the 21st century. And because they get along very well with Lula personally, makes it much easier. And Brazilian businessmen are very much interested in doing business with Russia. Yesterday night, for instance, there was a reception at the Brazilian Russian Chamber of Commerce. There were a lot of hardcore Russian businessmen as well. And during the day, there was a business meeting. And next week, there's going to be another BRICS business forum with lots of Russians as well. So geoeconomically, it's all moving. And they know, everybody knows that they are under pressure, and they have to get their act together as a multilateral organization because of this hybrid war of Trump 2.0 against BRICS, which is turning, as we saw with Iran, into a hot war.
Mm-hmm. What is the sentiment, though, in Brazil regarding the Belt and Road Initiative? Because that was a big question. Why is Brazil still not part of this? Why did they, refuse the offer essentially? And as I understand, there was some microchip facility for semiconductors, something to that effect, that was lost in Brazil, a manufacturing plant, as a result of essentially Bolsonaro and then Lula continuing the policy of saying, well, we're not going to join the BRI.
Because of Congress, Jackson. Congress in Brazil is basically controlled by the Bolsonaristas. So Lula is a minority in his own town. It's very complex. And of course, the Ministry of Foreign Relations, as we discussed, they are Atlanticists. So no Belt and Road. So what Lula essentially is conducting? Direct business deals, going sometimes directly to Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping behind him, of course, huge business interests. And we can catalog these deals as Belt and Road style. For instance, BYD, largest producer of electric cars on the planet, Brazil is one of their top frontiers from now on. It's Russia, Indonesia, and Brazil. They are building a gigantic plant here in the northeast of Brazil. So we have Belt and Road style deals, but not under Belt and Road, which is a very clever way also to dribble the Americans. Yes. They can say to the Americans, look, we're not part of Belt and Road, but the deals keep happening.
Well, it's I guess that's one way of doing it, and I hope that it continues to grow and develop. So, Pepe Escobar, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure,
Extremely
Jackson.
insightful commentary, and I encourage everyone to follow your reports on the BRICS Summit and everything else moving forward. Where's the best place to follow where you're going to be speaking about the key updates at this BRICS Summit?
Exactly. I'll be doing daily updates for Geopolitics Live and for Sputnik Russia. So you can see it on my channel, or you can see it in their channels and on X as well. And then I'll only write after the end of the summit. For the moment, it's basically speculation. We prefer to wait to see the practical results. And of course, the final declaration on Monday. This is going to be very tricky.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, we'll have those links below in the description. And I hope that it gets a little bit more sunny for you, Pepe. I hope you enjoyed this.
It's starting. You know, I wanted to tape our conversation in the terrace. I went there, everything was wet.
All right. You have a good rest of your day and time in Brazil. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.